Hi, thanks for tuning in to this month's webinar on designing worksheets. Uh, this one's a little different. The actual live webinar that we did the other week, it wasn't great. There was a lot of technical things. There was a lot of hiccups. There was a lot of ums, waits. Oh, why is this doing that? It wasn't good. So, as penance and atoning for that, I've put together me going over the material itself. I apologize, it doesn't have the usual din of thoughtful conversations and questions coming at me from the community and our usual, exchange. Um, Sorry, but this cut gets really to the core of it and has some good distinctions. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back to our regular webinars next week, and enjoy. Okay, let's talk about designing worksheets. As I have it here, make them pretty, make them meaningful, and make them a joy to fill out. Before we get into that, let's really set the stage and ask why. What's at stake for doing that? I'm going to take for granted that everyone watching this already knows, like, why have worksheets and worksheet assignments via CoachAccountable at all? Just to quickly summarize, it's an exercise in your people actually doing work to apply the coaching that you're doing. They get to participate in a little bit more, put pen to paper, actually think rather than regurgitating. They're actively creating. You can prompt them to do all kinds of things that have them really noodling through things you talked about, things you're trying to teach them, lessons you want them to get. You can also have this sort of thing reported into, pipe into metrics and become actionable data that can be collected over time, revealing trends, results, actual progress. So good stuff there. Again, building upon that, worksheets are worth using. Why take the effort to learn how to make them pretty, to make them as meaningful and as joyful to fill out as possible? Well, this is the stuff of eliminating friction from participating in your programs. You can imagine giving worksheets that are clunky, awkward to fill out, just don't really fit onto the screen or look all layout janky on a smartphone and not easy and intuitive and just has the experience of being coached by you and doing the work of your programs be a clunky affair that they might not want. By contrast, if you design them to be elegant, meaningful, set expectations of the amount of time that they're spent to be respectful of the time, and have it always work on whatever device that they prefer to do their work from, this is the stuff of giving them an experience that is buttoned up, professional, slick, a joy to show up for and participate in. And if they're doing the work of your worksheets and having fun with it, that's the stuff of them getting more out of your programs. So that's what's at stake. Let's look into the actual design of them. There's a couple of angles that I want to cover when it comes to designing worksheets. First, we'll look into choosing a type. Second, I'll go into simplicity rules, as in certain rules of simplicity, but also simplicity truly does rule the day when it comes to making these. How to use tables for adapting and getting some layouts, simpler ones, but again, making them look slick. Some magic behind naming inputs and why and how you can do that and how named inputs can be used in other places. And then finally, a couple of thoughts on content. So let's get right to it. We're going to start with the distinction of, well, which type of worksheet should you make your worksheets? And worksheets come in two types or two different flavors, as it were. It's not like it's an option that you have to pick when you're designing a worksheet. Which one do you want to create? It's really how you make a worksheet has it sort of come out as one of two very different experiences for your clients. One is a form-based worksheet. Now, this is any worksheet that you create that has one or more form inputs or form elements. When I say form elements, what I mean is checkboxes or drop-down menus or text box inputs for them to type in their answers. The presence of any of one of those worksheets kicks a worksheet into form-based mode, which is presented to them as, here's the form with all the words and content and any images you might insert into it and formatting and all that. And the only thing that your clients can do to interact with it is with those form inputs. They can check off some checkboxes. They can type exactly where you specify that they should type by virtue of having text boxes there. They can upload images if you give some image uploading prompts. That's it. Otherwise, the worksheet is fixed. The second flavor of worksheet, which is really more like the first, it's the absence of any form-based inputs. This is what we call a WYSIWYG worksheet or freestyle worksheet. It's so called that because absent the insertion of any things like checkboxes or drop-down menus, the only way that people can interact with it is to interact with the document itself. It's kind of like sending someone a Word doc that has some questions typed and some spaces for them to type in their thing and say, here, edit this document and save it and send it back to me. Their experience is a fully editable document that is in WYSIWYG mode so that they can do their own formatting. As a general rule, we like to say that form-based input is probably what you want to give people. There are a number of exceptions. There are a couple things where WYSIWYG really works. Let's go look at one of those examples. One flavor of worksheet that I think is really powerful is what I call the journal prompt, where it's often in coaching very useful for someone in a coaching program to journal on something. And you might want to give them an experience to journal about a certain topic. A common way that can be done, and I don't recommend this, is to give them an action item. Says, hey, go write a journal entry about something. And of course, with CoachAccountable has the journaling feature, and that enables them to then see, oh, I've got a new an action item from Coach. Go journal. Okay, let me log in. Go to the Journals tab. Hit plus journal entry. Add a new one. Type, and mark it complete when they're done. The only thing is that's not really tied back to the original action item with its reminders and marking complete. So the marking complete of the journal entry is not the same as marking complete the action item. So that's a little clunky. You can make it better by making a worksheet that is itself a rather open-ended thing, like a place to journal. So one of the preloaded templates that you have here is what we call the journal prompt. So journal about, and this is something that you can kind of fill in, what's a typical thing you might want your people, your clients, to journal about. I'd like you to take some time to journal about so and such. Feel free to type below and mark it complete when you're done. This is where you get the best of both worlds. You've got an open-ended document that they can type into and do the journal entry. When they're actually working on the assignment, it looks just like this. All these WYSIWYG tools, and they can type whatever they want. Maybe you've got a, you'd like them to do a photo journal of something. They can insert images. All those good things are possible. So that's a great use of a form-based worksheet, or excuse me, not a form-based, a WYSIWYG-based worksheet. Let's look at where that kind of WYSIWYG can kind of fall flat and therefore sort of suggest you might want to convert it into a form-based worksheet. So let's look at the classic WTF check-in, the what's that feeling? As you can see here, there's a little preamble, sort of like instructions, and then there are questions. And just as in that sort of Word document style of worksheet, you hit enter a couple times to make space, like, hey, as if to say to the client, hey, type here. Now, as is, there are no form-based inputs in here. So your clients will be, when they go to work on this, they'll have the exact same WYSIWYG toolbars, and they can type things like they're doing, and it's okay. It's a little janky, though, because what if they're making edits and like, actually, I didn't mean to say that. Let me just delete that last one. And they accidentally delete an entire question or mess up the formatting of the question. As you can see, yikes, what happened here? This was supposed to look like a assigned question. What was that? What it looks like? Yeah, something like that. It's almost too free-flowing. You might want to make it so that there's specific places for them to type in, and that's where a form-based worksheet comes in. So let me just back up a bit by hitting Control-Z, and let's put in those form inputs. Instead of this whole approach of we're going to hit enter a few times, we're going to insert a form item here. And let's see, we'll give them a multi-line text area. As you can see, there's a number of options. There's all those things that I mentioned, drop-down menus, checkboxes, radio buttons, and so forth. I'm going to go quickly through this. And we can also do something called validation. A really nice thing about form-based worksheets. You can avoid someone accidentally leaving half the worksheet complete because they didn't know it continued on and they had to scroll down or whatever. And you can say they must have something typed in, certain validation rules, and you can give a message. We'll get into naming a little later. We just hit insert. And again, we'll just kind of insert 2 or 3 more form inputs. More open-ended essay type questions are great for multi-line. Single text is if it's going to be a shorter answer. Validation, yes. And one last one. Oops, lost the formatting. There we go. Okay, this looks pretty good. Oh, here we go. What's one action you could take in the next 24 hours to get back on track? Let's make this a form-based item as well. One gotcha when you are doing this sort of conversion and making form-based worksheets, it's got to be all or nothing. If we were to sort of hit save as this and then preview it, This is a nice way. Form-based worksheets allow the preview button so you can see exactly what it would be like to fill it out for your clients. You could have someone where it's in this condition where type, grade, type, action, type. What's one action you could take in the next 24 hours to get back on track? There's nowhere I can click right here to type in, because it's, like I said, it's got its own structure where it's no longer in free-flowing WYSIWYG form where it's an open editable document. So you have to make inputs for all parts of the form. So let's do that. We'll add one more item, simple text, a one-liner, just a simple. Make it required. Oh, there's some other options for simple text. Sometimes you want someone to reply with a number, and then you can enforce that constraint by this validation rule. But for now, just something must be typed in. And then you could say I put in that placeholder text. That gives sort of an additional prompt that sort of augments the question itself. Okay. And there we go. We got something that's a nice form-based worksheet. Check validation and see that, yep, our little rules are firing off to enforce that they do all the work affiliated. Good. That's all there is to say really about the two different flavors of worksheet, form-based versus WYSIWYG freestyle. Again, generally speaking, you're going to want to make form-based. It's a little more buttoned up professional approach where you can also enforce validation. They won't accidentally delete half the worksheet. But again, sometimes it's nice to have WYSIWYG wherein it's much more open-ended for your clients. All right, the second area that I want to cover is titled Simplicity Rules. Basically, when designing these things, you kind of have to expect all devices. That's a double-edged sword. It's a wonderful thing that your clients are able to fill out their worksheets on any device, smartphone, tablet, or laptop computer. It makes it easier for them to do their work on the go. It reduces any sort of excuse called, I just didn't get around to it, it wasn't convenient to get around to it. So that mobility, that sort of all devices and all flavors works is a really nice thing. The backslash to that, however, with the double-edged sword, is that you need to make sure that your worksheets are actually going to work. In web developer parlance, this is what's called mobile-first design or responsive design. Make sure that they look good and don't just sort of go to all heck when viewed on a smaller screen. A lot of PDF documents are made such that they're like really pretty layout where it's like a lot of columns and this and that, and you might have those sorts of things. You might have, meticulously crafted worksheets that are designed for a medium of like straight up paper, 8.5 by 11s, and that's great when you can assume that, and not so great when you have to be responsible that something is mobile friendly. So this gets into the idea of sometimes you have to do some work to convert what you already have into and adapt to the medium that is web, that is responsive, that is fluidly available and friendly across all devices. So mobile friendly is what rules the day. And the best way to sort of deal with this is the idea that single column or close to it. Let's take a moment to look at it. I've actually got an example here that I want to pull up. One sec. Okay, here's an example of a form that looks really nice. I mean, it's not the nicest, but you can tell that there's a certain designness to it, and it fits a page really well. It's a PDF document. This is actually my sister. She's a dentist, and this is her, intake form for new patients. Really nice, smart design. A lot of yes/no columns and 3 columns areas here, and it all kind of lays out perfectly and all that. This would be a nightmare to try and put in verbatim into CoachAccountable as a worksheet, because again, can you imagine trying to fill out this worksheet on your smartphone? It's a misfit for the medium here. So let's look at the idea of single columns in action. We can kind of see it here where, in this worksheet, we've got question, space to answer, question, space to answer, question, space to answer. Let's take a look at another example here, one of the ones that are preloaded in your account, which is the fitness tracker. Here's an example that kind of shows that same thing where it's like, okay, last night I slept, please select, and my sleep quality was options. And at breakfast, we might be pushing a little bit, doing this little table layout with the 3 columns. We can kind of look at how that plays out on a smartphone. And then again, we've got 2 columns. Okay, like I said, single column, but maybe there's enough fresh air, or maybe there's enough fresh air. Maybe there's enough space on this. And overall, this is what we got. So let's preview it. And one fun thing that you can do is go into developer mode. On most browsers, it's Control-Alt-I, or Control-Shift-I, excuse me. And we can actually look at what a given worksheet that we're working on is and looks like in smaller devices. So I can just drag this little tools pane to make the screen smaller. And then suddenly I get an idea of like, okay, as I squeeze this, how's this looking? Not too bad. It's a little janky here, but that overall works. And you can kind of see in preview mode that this is functional. Developer tools also have this button here where it's toggle the device toolbar. This is basically saying, okay, I want to view this as if I was on a specific device. And here again, as I move back our thing, let's see, let's rotate the device as it were to portrait mode. And there we have it. Looks okay. So we can get away with this. This is really embracing the medium by not having something that's too complicated and generally going to single column with only a couple of examples. We might actually, maybe we got a little cocky here, but we can see that on an iPhone 6, 7, 8, that's sort of a standard size these days. It very rarely gets smaller than that. Even a 5, the ancient 5, okay, it looks a little bit run off, but here we go. So this is a nice way to preview what you got. You can go to the developer tools again, Control-Shift-I in Chrome and Firefox, and I believe Safari. I forget about IE, although those developer tools are terrible. So yeah, that's our look at it, and we go for simplicity. Let's look at what I said about using tables for layout. This is an example of that. We've got a 3-row table, and to sort of show how that was made, let's take out preview mode. Actually I'll build it again myself. So we're going to put the cursor here, and then we will insert a table. 3 columns, 1 row, that should be fine. We're going to go minimalist style. I'll just put these things in here. Let's click to copy that, and then we'll paste it. Whoa, that's a little crazy thing. The columns resize themselves automatically, so it's a little weird at first, but we'll just kind of go through here and paste that. And again, copy this and paste that. There we go. A little more equal now that all 3 columns have about the same stuff. We'll copy in here. You can see how I'm just kind of building content up in a table. And if we like those little lines, we could use it. Or we can click anywhere in the cell, or in any cell in the table, and hit table, and then edit table, and then we could pick another one. No borders, it's practically invisible, so that it's just for layout. We have a little dotted line here in design mode here, but if we hit save and hit preview, you can see we got that. And that might be even more fitting than trying to fit in that extra padding and space and shading behind there. So this is our way of using tables in again a hopefully fairly minimalist way, so that we can be responsible that it still looks good on all other devices. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about is naming inputs. So there are 3 reasons to name inputs: piping into metrics, using for calculated values, and to use as reportable data. Let's take a look at what that means. So we've got these here that are already named, I believe. Let's just look at I exercise for a total of blank minutes. So let's hit edit on here, and we see that name this. So we've got 2 options. No need, this answer will only be useful within this worksheet. That's the simpler answer. That means you're going to skip the right or the option to give a certain input a name. What that means is this data, i.e. whatever people type in as they fill out this worksheet, across your clients, or if it's a regular monthly or weekly check-in across time, that data will only be seen in the worksheet. It can't be used in other contexts. Now, the interesting part about naming it is like, okay, what if we answer the other thing? Yes, we can give it a name, and you can see I've given it a name here, exercise minutes. This was in response to I exercise for a total of minutes. We're going to give this a named value of exercise minutes. It's a label of what is this describing. And if we click this here, we can see that there are 3 things that are named for. Like I mentioned before, piping into a metric. What this means is if someone, for the exercise minutes, if someone were to report this every day for a month, They could have a metric graph that itself fills itself automatically in response to the filling out of this worksheet. That can be a really nice way to have a check-in worksheet that's, having people report on a number of things on a routine basis. All those graphs and charts will fill out themselves automatically. This is much nicer than leafing through like a dozen worksheets to sort of, one at a time, like look at the same number across all worksheets and see if you can suss out, are things going in the right direction or not. Having it in a graphical way automatically with no extra work on your part or your clients is a really nice bonus and a nice sort of, shall we say, byproduct of intelligence that comes out of that ritual of filling out a check-in form. The second application is to compute another value. We could, for example, design a computed value that is a score of how do you feel overall, like a composite score. So maybe minutes of exercise is worth some points, and fitting in all of these things is worth some points. Let's see what that looks like. And energy level is worth some points. I'm just going to do a crude example of a computed value here, basically kind of winging it from these ideas. Total fitness score for the day. And then we insert a form input. Let's close these out actually. Computed value, and then the formula. Whoa, look at all these items that were named, these named inputs. So let's say your total score equals the sleep hours times 10, because every hour is like really important, plus exercise minutes, plus maybe energy level times 20. And I think that's good. Let's not make this too complicated. I have a major in mathematics, so I can nerd it out really quickly. But basically, you can see we're kind of like typing into a calculator with pluses and parentheses and times signs and the asterisks, making a formula. And you can imagine if each one of these has a number, then you can plug and chug those numbers and actually get a composite score. Kind of fun. And let's insert that and see how this looks as we preview filling it out. Actually, let me delete some of this extra stuff because it's not just getting in the way. Okay, let's preview this. So, how I slept. Say 8 hours. Already I've got, 8 times 10 equals 80 points. So, and then exercised for 45 minutes. 45 plus that 80, 125. And then my energy was 100 points, 5 times 20 for fantastic. And you can see how we can make a composite score. It's kind of a fun little interactive bit, and there's ways to sort of have that be. You can imagine if you were, say, like, what good things to do this morning, what good things to do this afternoon. Summing them up gives a total for the day. And then that day value, again, could be named and piped into some other metric. So there's kind of cool ways to compute things. All right, that's computed values. And then the third application for these named things is reportable data. This comes into under reports in the data lab single value field report. You can export tables of these things. So if you can imagine having 20 clients, each of which are filling these out for every day for a month. These exercise minutes, you could run a report on exercise minutes across all of your clients and all the days that they've been reporting. And you can even total them by week, by month, and all kinds of other fun stuff. So those are the reasons to name your worksheet inputs. When you're going the form-based approach, you're getting structured data, and you can use that data to sort of show accountabilities to stakeholders, show trends, pipe it into metrics, reveal which coaches on your team are more effective because their scores are typically more or less than others, and so on. A lot of good applications there. All right, final section of our talk today. I want to just share a few thoughts on content. First is attention span expectations. One of the ways to be really respectful of your clients is to be clear up front what you're asking of them for a given worksheet assignment. And you can see this in a number of your preloaded worksheet tasks. Let's look at one of these. Oh, here we go. In the fitness review, see we've got this little preamble. You see it says, please take a few minutes, and you're letting them know, hey, this would be a quick one. We just want you to take so much time. Don't overthink it. I mean, if you've got 8 students for clients, they might be inclined to like, okay, whenever coach gives you an assignment, it's a big deal, and I got to set aside time in my calendar, my day, to make sure that I do really good and thorough work. It can be a real gift to people to let them know, hey, don't take much time. It doesn't have to be a big deal. In the pre-session check-in, for example, that comes preloaded. Please take no more than 5 minutes. This lets them know, hey, you're off the hook from going all in. Thanks for taking coaching seriously, but on this one, just relax. You can just get a quick job done, and that will be enough. On the other end of the spectrum, if there's a big assignment that you're going to give people that really calls for some introspection, give them a warning in advance in this sort of preamble text. I like to call this like the voice of God. I just put it in like small font, but italics, and having a little divider line that sort of is your instructions. And then we get down to the work. It's really nice to set their expectations. Like, hey, make sure you give yourself enough time for this. Or, hey, make sure you don't overthink this. I want quick reactions, and you don't need to stress. The second point about that is weaving a lesson. There's a nice pattern that I don't see too often coaches doing, but I think it's a really powerful one, which is you can actually, in your worksheets, put sort of teachable materials or content right into the worksheet itself, and then have the act of doing the worksheet not only be the act of doing the work to sort of come up with the answers or reflect or whatever, but it also is taking in material and for the first time even, and then applying what you learned or reflecting on what one learned right then and there. Here's an example of a worksheet that does just that. Let's see here. Here we go. Tidying up loose ends. So you can kind of see if you can, if you want, you can pause the video and you can read it real quick, where there's a little lessons on distinguishing a concept and getting into, some of the interior things that, you want to get into them, and then basically teeing it up like, okay, this is an important idea, so let's make space, and then get on to the actual work. So you're interlacing content with work. It's a way to have the exercise itself be its own little value add of learning and doing all in one. This is also especially nice because when you use embedded files that are embedded media, you can of course embed videos that are in other places like YouTube and Vimeo, things that are good for embedding. When you use those services to have library files that themselves are watchable videos, you can put a video right in line with one of your worksheets, and therefore they can read a little, watch something, maybe read a little more, then answer some questions, mark it done. It's a really pleasant experience where they're learning and doing it all at once. The next thing that I have thought on content: presence, purpose, and progress. It's a really easy way for us as designers of worksheets to assume that this is worth doing. Well, of course they know it's worth doing, and because we're giving them this assignment, and we just talked about this, and blah blah blah. Any of these blithe assumptions that can ride roughshod over, well, what's their experience of being asked to do this little assignment? You might want to take a moment again in that sort of preamble to presence, progress, and presence the reason why. Here's another example at the end of this one. At the very end, I say, that's all for this exercise. We're going to work next on tidying up those loose ends. You're going to love it. There's this sort of meta reflection on, hey, remember, you're in a coaching program and things are happening and way to go, and I acknowledge you for the work you've done, and this is going to be worthwhile. Here's another one, the WTF check-in. I mean, this does a great job of presencing the why. So you can kind of give that preamble and any sort of post note at the end. Like I said, please set this up here now and give yourself a reasonable due date. Thanks for doing the introspective work. These little things just kind of help keep it all together, keep it on track of the purpose of why. Tie it back to the bigger arcs of what you're teaching and where you're guiding people, where you're going, and maybe even where they've been. The final thing I have to say on thoughts of content is to aim for joy. And that's really kind of a summary of everything up to this point. When you set expectations, be respectful of their time. Maybe give a little value in that. These ideas, these worksheets are worth tuning into and doing themselves because they'll learn something new and useful along the way. Presencing the purpose and progress, being responsible that it works on whatever device that they use, being responsible that it's clear and well laid out and well thought out. all these things, you really do have in your power the ability to make doing this extra work in your coaching relationship both a value add and kind of a pleasant joy to do. So if you can do that and be mindful, use that preview ability, try these things out for themselves, see if you can experience what it's like to do these worksheets in the context of, being coached yourself. Sometimes it's a great idea to, if you're thinking about giving your client a worksheet exercise after a particular conversation you have with them, give it to yourself. Try filling it out yourself. See if that makes sense and flows based on what you just talked about, and if it feels like it fits well. If you're doing that, you've got a massive leg up in terms of your clients really enjoying the experience that you're giving them, and you're giving them more value on all the way. That's all I have to say about this. Thanks again so much for tuning in. Sorry we didn't have actual live people on the line for it, but like I said, that cut was a lot rougher than this one, so this is much more to the point. I hope you got lots of value, and I hope to see you on a future webinar next time.